Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the movie Hereditary 2018 with Toni Collette. Alright, so this content contains major spoilers for the movie Hereditary. Alright, I really like this movie. I liked it a lot. This is a 4 out of 5 star movie in my opinion. It is the second horror movie that I've seen from A24. So I think A24 has done three primary horror movies so far, which is It Follows, The Witches, and now Hereditary. I have not seen It Follows yet. I did see The Witches, and now I've seen Hereditary. I really like The Witches a lot. I thought it was really fantastic horror film, and basically, you know, Hereditary is A24 following their progression of quality for horror films. This movie is a fantastic horror film. It's really being done well. One thing I think also to note about A24 is I think they have really become the $10 burgers of horror movies. So like good example is like Saw, right? You know, you see have a movie like Saw, that's McDonald's, right? You know, you're gonna pay, you can get $1. You know, you can get a burger for $1 there. It's a cheap burger, right? But then you can go to Shake Shack or Five Guys or Wahlburgers, all these $10 burger places, right? That's what A24 is. A24 is the Shake Shack of horror movies. It's just awesome quality, extremely well executed, you know, and that's the thing. The other thing is, one thing I think is really interesting is a lot of people aren't going to dig that, right? So I really think that A24 is on a great progression for horror movies, but I also think a lot of people are going to reject it outright. And there's somebody I care about really well who will not go to any of these $10 burger places there because they're like, that's a $10 burger, right? You know, and to them, the idea of that is ridiculous, right? And I think a lot of people too. The A24 horror movies are very different, right? So one of the things that I think is it kind of is a formula. So I think A24 has somewhat of a formula, and that's okay. Like when you're a movie studio, you're going to have your own formula. You'll tweak that. There'll be some variations here and there in each iteration, but they have a formula. And what I think the A24 formula is they heard everybody complaining about this jump cut thing. And a lot of horror fans complain a lot about jump cuts, right? Now I think this complaint is absolutely ridiculous to go to a horror movie and complain that it has jump cuts, right? That's like buying a Lego set and complaining that it has 1x4s in it because you've used 1x4s in other Lego sets. It's insane, right? Jump cuts are building blocks of horror films, so to complain about them is absurd. And the other thing I think that's kind of interesting is overall the demands of Americans for entertainment are so outrageously high now that it's clear like places like A24 are listening to the most ridiculous requests, right? And then making it real. So one of the things that A24 has done is there's generally no jump cuts in these movies, right? You basically Hereditary is an hour and 50 minutes of tension, one jump cut, and then an absolute end of the roller coaster ride descent down into everything that you know, just to like kind of just putting there everything that you wanted to know. Is this real? Is this not real? What's happening in this film? So I think A24 is a real game changer horror-wise. I'm very excited. Like, whatever they're doing next, I'm in. Like, you know, I bought a ticket to the next A24 horror movie. Whatever they got coming, bring it. You know, like, because I really feel like they're being very careful. They're being very intentional, and their horror movies are tremendous. They're extremely well executed, right? They're thoughtful. They make sense. Now, when they get so let's talk a little bit about Hereditary itself. All right, so the idea here is essentially the grandmother, Ellen, has a daughter named Annie. Annie has a husband named Stephen. Stephen and Annie, have two children, a boy and a girl. Charlie, a 13-year-old girl, and Peter, who I think is about a 17-year-old boy, right? And basically what happens is Ellen, the grandmother, forms a cult that worships Satan, right? Now, they specifically worship Paimon, who's one of the 8 kings of hell. One of the things that's absolutely by the way, I've thought this movie was absolutely terrifying, right? So, but let me get through the summary, and then I'll kind of talk about my experience with the film. So, so Ellen specifically worships Paimon, but the reason why I mentioned Satan is, like, basically Paimon, she recognizes him, Ellen recognizes Paimon as one of the 8 kings of hell, right? So, and what she does is she forms this cult, this satanic cult, and then says, I'm going to do a generations-long ritual to make sure that you get in the body to put King Paimon into the body of a human male, right? Or into an ideal perfect host, an ideal human host, right? So basically, Ellen attempts to put Paimon into her own son, Annie's brother. That doesn't work, and he kills himself. Annie then becomes pregnant, and then, you know, basically with Peter, and then with Charlie, and, you know, basically her mother Ellen is manipulating her all along, and fully intends to put Paimon into the body of, well, at first they do put Paimon into Charlie, and so Charlie is this incredibly disturbed 13-year-old girl. And she dies when her brother takes her to a party, and her head is knocked off on a telephone pole when she has an allergic reaction. Her brother, who is stoned, is driving home and gets into a car wreck and actually kills his sister, right? Then drives home, leaves her dead body in the car, and goes upstairs and sleeps, right? This movie is just so dark. And that's like in halfway through the film, maybe a third of the way through the film, and it just gets darker from there. Like, this movie is pitch black. It is dark as can be, right? So then, so Charlie dies. Then it really gets ramped up where the cult's activities to get Paimon into Peter occur. Annie is having a really hard time with the death of her mother, then having a hard time with the death of her daughter, and so she goes to this grief group. This woman Joan connects with her. Then the woman Joan introduces her to a seance so that Joan can speak to her dead son Louis, which is probably short for Lucifer, right? And also is made up, right? And then gives Annie everything she needs to perform a ritual in her own home with everybody under the roof of the house, and is instructed and given, you know, the Latin terms, given the candle. The cult makes sure that all the members of the family are under the roof, including the dead body of Annie's mother, Ellen, right? Then, essentially, at that point, Annie gets frightened. She brings the family together, and they do this ritual together, right? She has them, you know, so Stephen gets in there, her husband, Peter's in there, of course, Annie's dead. They do this ritual, which opens the house, opens all of them to all these demons coming into the house, and specifically opens the way for Paimon to possess Peter. And that's exactly what happens. There is a point where Annie begs her husband Stephen to throw this one of the elements of the ritual, this book, into the fire, right, to be destroyed, so that one of the elements in the ritual is destroyed and the ritual can be stopped. Stephen does not do what he's asked. He ends up dying when Annie throws the book into the fire. Stephen bursts into flames and dies. And then at that point, the final scene comes in. And essentially, Peter falls asleep, gets up, and at this point, there's a demon in his mother. The cult members show up at the house, right? The ritual is complete, and Peter actually sees Paimon standing in the corner. There's a little bit of a running through the house. He tries to actually jump outside the window. He actually falls onto the ground, and then this light that has been shown foreshadowed, ironically, all the way through the film. Paimon enters into Peter. Peter goes into this treehouse, which is a satanic temple, and all the members converge there. And and then Joan says to Peter, Peter, you are Paimon now. Paimon, let me explain what happened. We put you into Charlie. We didn't realize that you needed a male body. We've now put you into the male body. And, and then they show Annie's decapitated body, Charlie's decapitated body. Charlie's decapitated head is right there on this mannequin, right? And essentially Joan says, we're done. The ritual's finished. You're in your perfect body. And the entire plan of Queen Lay, which was Ellen, right? The grandmother is now complete, right? So evil completely wins in this film. Good is completely pushed back, right? And I was shocked. I was so shocked. So this is an incredibly well executed horror movie. I was scared crapless. I mean, it was just like, when I was watching this movie, I had the perfect situation. My entire family was down at the beach having a good time. They had gotten an invitation for a really nice 3-day vacation on the beach. I had to work. So there was nothing really for me to do. So I went to see Hereditary by myself. There was like 4 people in the theater, and everybody was down. Like, everybody was quiet. And the only thing you heard were people like gasping for intakes, like, it was like everybody was into it, right? And it was terrifying. The movie was absolutely terrifying. By the end of the movie, the tension's been ratcheting up, and I did not want to see what was coming on the screen, but I also was like, I've watched this for an hour and 50 minutes, I have to see this. And so I was just clutching the seat, the armrests, and I was just terrified. This movie was really, really scary. I even came home, and my entire family was there, and my wife had gotten home, and my wife came up from the basement and just put a laundry basket on the ground, and just it made a scuff on the on the floor, but it was around the corner and I couldn't see it, right? And I was actually sitting with my kids in a fully lit living room, and I startled, like, what was that? It was like this movie scared me crapless, right? Now, one thing is, it really did shock me that this movie was made. And one of the reasons why is this movie says some really, really shocking things from a Hollywood perspective. And this is a Hollywood film. Toni Collette is objectively a Hollywood actress, right? But this movie says things that are completely non-Hollywood, right? So what does it say that's not Hollywood? And what does the movie actually say? So here's what I think the movie said. It said a whole lot of stuff, right? So one, it said, if you do drugs, bad things are going to happen. If you do occult rituals, dark, evil, terrible things are going to happen, right? And that's a little surprising. The other thing is, this movie comes from the perspective that the devil is real and that demons are real. This isn't even and that's the point too that I thought was really shocking, is a lot of movies now, they leave room for interpretation, where the Babadook, you could be like, oh, well, that's just her internal struggles manifesting in a dark way that only she sees, right? But this is no, this isn't a mental health issue. This isn't an illusion. This isn't a fever dream. This isn't a dream. This isn't a drug haze. These people really did resurrect a real demon into this young man, and now that demon is going to be in that young man until he dies, and then they'll take that demon out and they'll put him somewhere else, right? And that is super dark. That is matte black painted on gloss black. That is dark. And I'm like, that is shocking to me that any Hollywood movie would come from that perspective. And the reason why is, and I think the numbers show this, right, is generally today in 2018, most people would laugh at the idea that the devil is real. And also, many of the reviews that I saw for this, People were like, why did they do this? Why did they do this? And for them, the idea that the devil is real, that spirits, that demons are real, that demons can actually, possess people, all that is like an alien concept to them, right? So the other thing is, I will say this now, if you saw The Witches and you did not like The Witches, you are not going to like Hereditary, right? So you could probably skip it because basically it's just not for you, right? But if you like The Witches, this is better. This is The Witches, better quality, right? And not better quality because The Witches wasn't good, but better quality because A24 is perfecting their game. They're like really ratcheting up what they're capable of doing, right? So, and so I was, basically I 100% agree with everything this film is saying as far as, its primary messages are, if you do drugs, bad things are going to happen, right? And if you do occult rituals, dark, terrible, evil things are going to happen. It is not going to go well. And so like that, that I'm 100%, absolutely agree with both of those statements, right? And so it's really pretty shocking just overall what's in this film and the message that this film has. I really liked a lot of the ways the movie was just shot and a lot of things they actually accomplished in the film. So one of them was just the idea of this light is actually shown throughout the film, which is Paimon during the daytime. And I think that's another thing that's really been done well lately in horror, is the idea that horror happens in the day and in the night, not just at nighttime, right? The other thing is, the other thing I think I really liked about this was, with all of these horror movies, I think it's become understood that if you have a horror movie, one thing you have to do is essentially you have to show the monster. You absolutely have to show the monster. Like, back in the old days, I think, we were, when we had seen a lot less in movies, you could like get away with a shadowy figure or whatever. But one of the things is, in this film, you actually see Paimon. Peter actually sees Paimon standing in the corner of the living room before Paimon actually possesses him. And now that was absolutely terrifying. It was just so scary, right? And it's just extremely well executed film. I think A24 is king of the hill. Nobody's even close when it comes to horror right now. Overall, I think A24 is really on the right track. I really liked The Witches last year. I really liked Hereditary this year. This is a fantastic movie, and I just take to heart the lessons. If you do drugs, bad things are going to happen. If you do occult rituals, dark, terrible, evil things are going to happen. The only other thing I would say is the other one that I was just really so shocked about, where they went on the just their message about drugs, because one of the things that was, a lot of people today, illegal drug use is kind of on the rise, and there are states that are making it quasi-legal but not fully legal. And one of the things that really shocked me was what they went down, the road they went down there was, one of the things it showed that because I've never done I've never been intoxicated in any way in my life. I've never drunk a beer, and I've never done, I've never taken any illegal drugs. This is an incredible gift that was given to me by my parents. They gave me confidence not to be affected by peer pressure, and we had other relatives who had really struggled with with different with different things, and so I never touched it. I never started, right? And one of the things is, I've always understood that, there's just so many problems with illegal drugs. With drugs, essentially, specifically, I'm not talking about medicine that's been prescribed by a doctor that's taken in the right dosages. I'm talking about illegal drugs. One, you don't know what you're going to get, right? And that movie showed this. The other thing is, so you don't know what you're going to get. People think they're in control, but the reality is they can't control the supply that they're getting, right? Which means that anything can happen to you when you take these things. And then the other thing is, the moment you start taking drugs, everything you see, everything you witness, everything you interact with, you can't tell that story. You're no longer a valid witness, because because you know, anything you say to anybody, if you were on that thing at that time, they could just say that's the effects of the drug, you know, and because there could be anything in that drug, they're absolutely right that to presume that, you know. And so I was amazed what, you know, how like after school special this was, where like if you do drugs, terrible, you know, really bad things are going to happen, you know. And if you do a cult, you know, and then but you know, just the idea that this movie came down and was like, it was a Hollywood film saying if you do drugs, bad things are going to happen. Boy, do I agree with that, man. Stay sober. Take care, everybody.